Hey, I wanted to try to speak briefly about a couple of things that are weighing on me. And recently, I was downtown Chico, California, at the plaza, what they call. They got a fountain down there and some benches, and it's a nice place for homeless people to congregate. And spend time together. And there's a restroom facility. And the city has passed this sit-lie ordinance, which is basically persecution of the poor, and it's unconstitutional. Uh, you can't tell someone they have to leave a public place unless you offer them at least an alternative. They've got to have some place to be. They're born in America. They're Native Americans in that sense, as anyone that's born in the country is, and they have a right to exist. Basically, they have a right to survive, and So anyhow, I was down there trying to get some opinions, and thank God there is some controversies, brewing, and there's people out there that are pointing out, and it's making the mainstream media that this is an unconstitutional ordinance. It's arbitrary and capricious and unlawful in terms of American values and law. So anyhow, I was down there trying to get some opinions. There wasn't too many regular folk, let's say, around. There was mostly vagrants, homeless people, and they weren't really the ones I was looking for an opinion from. I was looking for it from the average run-of-the-mill citizen, shall we say. And I was going to ask some hard questions, what we ought to do, and maybe stick them in FEMA camps, concentration camps, and just get them out of sight because they're hurting property values, and the businesses are always complaining about them. So that's what I was down there doing. That's when I ran into a fella that went by the name of Pan, and he was very articulate, intelligent fellow, young guy. I asked him how old he was. He said 27. He looked somewhat older, but he acted much older. And about 15-20 minutes into the conversation, I noticed that the symbol on his hat was actually a pentagram, and I started putting it all together, and it turns out that he's likely a Satanist. I didn't come out point blank and ask him, but it became pretty evident in the conversation. And I brought up Alex Jones, the radio talk show host, filmmaker out of Austin, Texas, who many people all around the world are quite familiar with. And the guy went off. I mean, he just switched like a light, and he said, if there was, Dr. Phil and Alex Jones and someone else, in the road, he'd shoot for Alex Jones. And, but he obviously hated these other guys too, he mentioned, among Dr. Phil. But it was a very strange conversation. And then somehow Jesus came into the conversation. I often do talk about Jesus because I love to quote him, and I think what he taught was of unsurpassed, profound quality, his teachings. And, so that's why I like to talk about him. But anyhow, this guy was agitated, and but he held his, he conversation fairly well. And, so I kept talking to the fella. I wasn't filming him at the time, though I had my camera and tripod with me. But a buddy of his standing near that wouldn't make eye contact with me, handed him a rather large hunting knife, maybe 8-10 inch knife. And he held it and looked at me in kind of a menacing way, halfway brandishing it. And, it was really bizarre. But, I didn't feel a lot of fear, although, I mean, with one lurch, the fella could have, because we were talking, 5-6 feet away from each other, he could have easily, inflicted a fatal wound on me. But for some reason, I I didn't think about it, and in retrospect, I wonder about Daniel and, the protection he got from angels and whatnot. But, you know, I just looked at the fella and I said, I know what you're about, but if you were in a burning house, I would go in there after you. And this fellow looked at me and told me he would do the same thing. And I thought that was quite remarkable. I thought we were entertaining angels without knowing it. And I warned this fellow, as a brother, as a fellow human being, as part of the collective humanity. I said, listen, you can blaspheme the Father, you can blaspheme the Son, but don't blaspheme the Holy Spirit of truth. Okay, that's the comforter, the encourager, the counselor. That's the Holy Spirit of God. That's like lying to your very conscience. That's like saying you hate your existence, you hate your soul, you have no regard. You don't want those things, you don't value them, they're of no pertinence or relevance to you, and you wish they would just go away. And I warned him in so many words that, that's one thing. And I said, you wouldn't go against your own conscience, would you? And he stumbled. And as if perhaps he hadn't gone too far. And, I don't know that the idea that he was worshiping Satan, Lucifer, evil, whatever, that this is unforgivable. I don't know. But if his conscience is stricken, and then he continues to do it, and he denies truth when truth is staring him in the face, that's when it's unpardonable. That's when you've got to go down a notch. You've got to go to this painful place called hell until you learn your lessons. And, it's our job not to judge and condemn people, judge in that sense, but to encourage them to not want to do that and to become attractive and to encourage them to want to come out of that. Don't live for this little bit of time. Live for the idea that you're an eternal cosmic creature, okay? And you might as well make the best of this ride, since it just goes on and on and on. And you want to go up from here. So you have an obligation to yourself, to humanity, to imagine that place. What will it be like? What things would you eliminate from this heaven, from this paradise? The ideal society that you want. What things would you add? And we all need to be honest with each other and ask ourselves those questions. Anyhow, there's another issue I wanted to speak about, and that is the fact that, we are all part of a collective. And it came to me just this morning. This is November 21st, 2013. And that is the fact that you could use the human body as an analogy for the collective humanity. The people at the head, let's say, are those that are well heeled, the establishmentarians, those that want to protect the status quo because it's working well for them. That would typically be the incentive, because it was obvious to them that if the establishment fell apart, their job security may well fall apart. So it's understandable what their motive is. I'm not saying this about everybody that's out there working. I mean, we all, to some degree, work within the establishment. If you're using money, Federal Reserve notes, in this case, if you're in America, then, we're all kind of sucked into it. Some are forced into it, kicking and screaming like myself, the anti-establishmentarians, and others just seem to go along with the program. And those are the ones that need to be awakened. And they need to decide, listen, when the chips are down, where are you going to stand on this whole thing? Which side are you going to be on? That's the one question they all need to ask, because the thing it's got to die. It's rotten to the core. It's a false god, this god of money. And we need to get off the stuff. We're all mainlining it, and we need to figure out how we're going to get a society to work and render that stuff irrelevant. And I'm talking about freedom and liberty for everybody. So back to my analogy. Now you could get the middle part, the torso, let's say, is the middle class. And a lot of them are bitching and whining now because they're starting to feel some of the pain. Although with the quantitative easing, it's been, their minor abrasion has been lessened and healed somewhat, or at least in their minds temporarily. They're not very secure, and neither are the rich very secure. They're like Jesus said, they fear they will lose, but they go about, smiling and saying, "Hey, the system's great. We can fix it," and just, tweak here and tweak there. Those are the people at the top. And the people in the middle are right behind them because, they've got an interest too in keeping this thing together, keeping this ship afloat. But the people at the bottom are really suffering. They're hemorrhaging out, okay? They're literally dying because of economic tyranny. Totally unnecessary, totally invoked, conjured up, invented misery, okay, to the point of death. They're dying out there. Do you understand why I'm appalled when I see, like so many, and I go, oh my God, we can't, what are we tolerating here at this point in human history? That's the difference between now and any other time in history, folks, is that this is wildly unprecedented. I mean, we're supposed to make an iota of progress in terms of social economic justice, okay? Give me a break. Give me a break. This is ridiculous. It's absurd. Okay, and it's all because of a handful of really evil people that are making the policies. And there's a relationship between policy and policing. Okay, they literally have the authoritarian police department, law authorities out there that are protecting this gaggle of thugs, murderous thugs. Okay, we've got Alex Jones over there protesting. This is another thing I wanted to touch on. Protesting the JFK assassination at the Daily Plaza, I think it's called, over there in Dallas, Texas. And I think it's remarkable, that there's people that really get it. And he's also protesting the Federal Reserve Bank because there's a correlation. If you ask anybody that's deeply researched this subject about who they believe is behind it, who benefits, cui bono, who benefits, the Federal